On this episode of Artifactuality, can art help us recognize injustice? Can it help us face the wrongs of the past? Can it help us heal and move forward? My name is Kim Thúy. On this podcast from the Canadian Museum of History, together we explore what objects and stories from the past can tell us about who we are today. What will resonate tomorrow? How will the events unfolding around us be remembered in the future?
I have always believed in the Creator. I believe that right at the split second, we're living in the Creator's creation.
Master carver Stanley C. Hunt is a member of the Kwagu'ł First Nation. He lives in the northeast of Vancouver Island in the village of Secwépemc, also known as Fort Rupert.
I look out my window and we look in our bay and we see every single day and every single second that bay is changing. There's eagles and ravens and sometimes killer whales, sometimes humpback whales. The tide comes in, the tide goes out every day. You see crabs and clams, and it's remarkable. And I truly do believe that that's the Creator's creation.
Stanley created an impressive monument to honor the victims of Canada's residential school system. It's carved out of a huge red cedar log and stands almost 20 feet tall. It features carvings of 130 children's faces. Their expressions are serious and sorrowful. None of them are smiling. They're painted black and outlined in orange, the color associated with Every Child Matters. It's a movement to honor the lives lost in Canada's residential schools. These institutions operated from coast to coast to coast for more than a century. They were created to break up Indigenous families and eliminate their cultures and languages. Many of the staff and clergy who ran the schools emotionally, physically, and sexually abused thousands of children. Stanley was inspired to create the memorial when he heard about the unmarked graves at a former residential school site near Kamloops, British Columbia. Stanley remembers the moment he heard about it. He was carving a totem pole with his nephew Mervyn.
I was working on another memorial pole in my backyard where I do totem poles. And I remember we had the radio on listening and they were talking about 215 children. Mervyn and I stopped and we listened to it. And it's hard to describe a moment like that when you hear that type of news. It didn't seem real. So we listened to the whole broadcast and we looked at each other and we were both emotionally distraught. It was hard to hide your emotions. And then watch the news every day past that to see if it was real, and it certainly was. There's lots of deep discussions about that time and how that could possibly have happened.
Stanley's parents and two of his oldest siblings were taken to residential schools. He and his other 14 siblings were part of the 60s scoop, an era when Indigenous children were taken from their families and placed in non-Indigenous homes. Stanley says he and his family rarely talked about their experiences.
We've always had an inkling of what it might have been like. There was always something that you knew had happened, but you couldn't put your finger on it. Well, I know my dad, one time he was hungry and he kept a cube of sugar in his pocket. And somehow they found it. And I guess they used to take the shirt off and use like a hickory stick. And they beat him for that little piece of sugar. He did tell us that.
Stanley was on a mission to create a monument that would bear witness to colonial harm and pain, a monument that could open doors to recognition and healing.
out of all the sculptures that I've made, they're basically all over the world, but this sculpture, that took a lot of effort and a lot of emotion to complete it. You know, not all history is about happiness and beauty and things that happen. There is some parts of history that people don't want to ever talk about. You couldn't even imagine people talking about this 100 years ago.
At the top of the monument, Stanley carved a large raven. He says in his culture, the raven represents the Creator.
This raven is looking down on top of the monument, down the center of it. And the raven's cradling the seed of life in his beak. And his wings aren't fully extended out, they're more down, so as to comfort the children, to bring them home. And all of the faces that are on the monument every face is different. And I inverted the cross deliberately on the monument, and I inverted the maple leaf and the RCMP and Northwest Mounted Police deliberately. But at the same time, when the raven's looking down that monument, he's looking straight down the front of it where the cross is. The raven sees that cross right side up. And the raven is going to help us make this right, bring those children home. He's calling for their spirits to come home. And I believe it's going to work and that it's going to happen, and that we're going to find these children. I don't want the government to just find them. I want them to name them, because they all had names. They could have all had careers. We don't know what they could have become. They could have become artists. They could have become writers, painters. They could have become premiers or doctors, lawyers. Could have been anything, but they weren't given a chance to do that.
Stanley worked on the monument for almost a year with help from two of his nephews. When the carving was complete, he invited people from the community to help paint it, along with members of the RCMP and the Coast Guard. Stanley remembers the moment the monument was taken out of the tent where it was created.
I say that's the split second it was born to the world. So I wrote that exact time down once the tent came off of it, and it's the first time we could back up and see it, because in the tent you're only looking at it from 4 feet away. It was remarkable to see that for the first time. I mean, you had that image in your head, but to see it in real life, it did take you a moment to stop and look and think about all what just had happened before you got to this moment, to be able to see it.
I guess it became alive.
It did. I'll tell you one thing about that happened after it was undressed and it was out by itself. Is I have my granddaughter, Jade. She's 7 years old, and she's very nonverbal. She's absolutely beautiful, but she has her own little challenges in her life. And it just happenstance. It wasn't planned, it wasn't thought out or anything, but she has a little orange and black sun hat on, a little jean jacket and a little red summer dress. And on her own, she walks over to the monument and stands beside it, and she puts her hands up to it, but she doesn't touch it. Her hands are about 1/4 of an inch away from touching it, and she just closed her eyes and just stood there. I don't know what she was thinking. She can't tell us what she's thinking. I hope one day she'll be able to tell me what she was thinking.
Stanley knew he wanted the monument to be seen by as many people as possible so he approached the Canadian Museum of History. Dr. Caitlin McCormick is the curator who worked with Stanley on the acquisition.
I think what's so special about it is that it really is a tangible object that will allow Canadians and visitors to connect to the history of residential schools. This is part of the history here that we're currently in the period of revisiting, and we're always working on how to better and more effectively communicate that history in collaboration with individuals who survived residential schools or who are connected to them. And so I think the most important part of it is that it's going to help us to bear witness to that history and to take ownership of it as Canadians and also as employees of the National Museum.
But first, how do you transport a 6,000 to 7,000 pound work of art across 5 provinces? Moving the monument from Vancouver Island to Gatineau, Quebec involved a flatbed truck, a hovercraft, and a catamaran. The monument was uncovered throughout its journey so the children's faces could bear witness to each stage.
I believe that totem poles all have their own spirit. And I believe this one, I wanted him to see his entire journey, that he was being honored by being escorted by the RCMP right through to Ottawa from Fort Rupert. I wanted him to see the Canadian Navy. They weren't just escorting us into the harbor with the HMCS Edmonton. On the bow of the Edmonton, there was like 30 or 40 Navy guys all standing on the bow at ease, but they all had on their white uniforms. I don't know of anything like this that has ever happened that's had this much support by the RCMP, the Coast Guard, the Canadian Navy, the Canadian Army brought it from Vancouver to Regina on back of one of the army trucks.
The monument made several stops during the journey. At each location, a ceremony was held to honor the victims. The first one was in Stanley's backyard.
We had 4 toys, little sailboats that my cousin Calvin made. We had 4 little pairs of moccasins, 4 children's t-shirts, orange t-shirts, and we had 4 plates of food. We did that for the children. We were sending all of that to them so they knew we were coming for them.
So what was it like seeing residential school survivors engage with the monument?
Oh, that was incredible. In every stop that we stopped and gave our speeches and songs and talked, and there were people that would come up and they would, is it okay if I put my hand on this? And of course, and they'd put their hand on it and they'd just close their eyes and they just totally some of them just broke right down and just, I've never spoken to anybody about what happened to me in residential school, and they'd sit there and tell us a story. And that happened over and over and over and over again. People would walk up and bring in flowers and holding, just to put their hand up and holding on to it, and they'd just break right down and just have a very emotional moment. And they'd thank us for bringing this to them and for them to see it. And thank you for making this. And this is something that we all need to see. And there was many, many tears anyway on our journey.
Maybe it brought also a bit of healing.
I believe it does, yep. I think that's what it was made for, was to heal, to bring forth the truth. And I think from what I've witnessed so far from Port Hardy to Ottawa, I believe that it's helping people.
To be seen and to be heard, I think.
And to just hear their own voice saying their own story. A lot of them said they've never spoken to anybody about what happened to them. And then here they are talking in front of 100 people or more and telling what they went through. We walked through the museum a day or two after we arrived. We did drum it and sing it into the museum at the back in the delivery dock or whatever. We were all dressed in our regalia and we were helping the truck bring it in and singing. But when I was there, to me, I felt I was hugely honored that the museum would even consider having a piece that is probably going to be pretty controversial in its lifetime, because I don't know of any monument anywhere in the world that has a cross deliberately made upside down. It's not to insult anybody neither. It's to mark a very dark time in history where some very, very bad decisions were made. That's what that's marking. I love Canada. I'm proud to be Canadian. I'm proud to be Kwagu'ł, but I couldn't imagine living anywhere else in the world. But every country must have their closet full of these ugly little secrets that they don't really want anybody to know, but when it comes out and then once it's known and it's a fact, I think they should just help us understand the truth by giving us all the information that they've hidden.
This is the loading dock area. So the monument, when it came in, it was removed from the flatbed and it was brought into...
I'm at the museum with Dr. Caitlin McCormick. She's the curator of Indigenous histories and contemporary cultures for Western Canada. Caitlin shows me where the monument is currently being stored.
Oh, Caitlin, where are we now? What are we looking at?
Sure,
Because everything is so big.
That's right. So we rotate items on and off display. And so when an item is currently not on display in the galleries, a large item, it'll come down here. And this is where we care for those items when they're not in the gallery spaces.
The monument is currently laying down and wrapped in a thick plastic cover.
It is so big that I think you can hear me walk alongside the monument, right? And we can have basically a whole conversation between, from the beginning to the end.
Caitlin says Stanley's desire to work with the museum means a lot. Since 1978, the museum has been repatriating objects to Indigenous communities. Staff have made it a priority to build and strengthen those relationships.
When it came here, we saw that spirit of reconciliation in the museum as well when the monument arrived. Stan invited museum staff to help wash the monument, so you can see that as an act of care. So as soon as it arrived, we were all kind of taking warm water and washing because it had been on the road. And then also to even help finish painting up details that had been kind of scraped or rubbed off in the course of its journey outside. So that was really special. And for those of us who were lucky enough to attend its arrival and the kind of reception and ceremony, we all got to participate in caring for it from the minute it arrived, from washing it and painting it to participating in some of the ceremony outside. So it was really special and inclusive, and I think everyone here at the museum who I saw felt overwhelmed with emotion at being involved in this amazing event. And to know that this is a work that the artist and his family wanted here in the National Collection was really special and unifying.
I would say that, being here, having the opportunity to stand next to it and to see the size of it, it's striking in the sense that you realize how important and massive, our history needs to be understood and felt, especially, I think, even if we didn't know enough about our history, just standing by this monument, you can feel it, and I get all emotional to be here in the presence of all these children. Yeah.
And you're not alone. I mean, this is this piece has a power to it. It's a living being, and it also has this emotional power that connects everyone who sees it and who becomes in its presence.
I think it's the right decision that it's because it's beyond art. Art is, yes, the vehicle, but I think this piece is part of history and, our society, our culture. And also it's showing us the way to take for the future.
That's right.
Almost.
Exactly. And I think it's because it's so inclusive. That's the way forward, is to work together to recognize that we have different histories and different heritages and different experiences in this country, but that we can work together to be better and to do things in a good way. And I think that this piece really inspires that spirit in people.
I put my hand on the plastic covering the monument. Even with the covering, the room is filled with the smell of cedar. I can feel the carved shapes in the wood. Just want to say we're sorry. We're sorry.
You can feel it. It has this energy coming out from this piece, and just the size of it, it makes you feel very, humble, facing, I guess, human nature, the dark side of human nature, and for us to remind us that it can overtake us, and if we're not careful, we will fall into these actions which are not possible to be repaired. We can only hope that we won't make them again.
I think that we're in a transitional moment as a country right now, and that this particular piece coming here will help with that transformation, and will have this effect of helping people to bear witness, and then kind of will change the way that they see this history.
Caitlin hopes museum visitors will be inspired to reflect on the role they can play in reconciliation. Stanley says he hopes people see the truth.
The truth that this isn't just a story, that this really did happen. I believe it's going to give us a focal point to understand, to discuss this story. I don't think that people ever wanted to really hear a story of a residential school survivor. I don't think that people were ready for, I think people thought it was all made up. And I hope that this gives us a focal point that it's okay to speak, and it's okay to shed tears, and it's okay to even be angry. I hope it opens people's eyes, and that people that don't even want to hear about it are going to hear about it. And that they just let people talk.
Stan, it was really a privilege for me to get to talk to you. Thank you for your talent, and thank you for the audacity.
Well, thank you for even letting me tell my story, and thanks for listening and maybe helping us bring it to the world. I appreciate that, I really do.
Thank you.
In our language, we say Gaelacasla.
Gaelacasla.
Gaelacasla. That's thank you and have a good day.
Thank you. Master carver Stanley C. Hunt talking about his piece called Indian Residential School Memorial Monument. Thanks also to Dr. Caitlin McCormick, a curator at the Canadian Museum of History. Thanks for listening to Artifactuality, a podcast from the Canadian Museum of History. I'm Kim Thúy. Artifactuality is produced by Antica Productions. Anne Lang is our producer. Subin Kim is the researcher. Laura Roguer and Stuart Cox are executive producers at Antica. Mixing and sound design by Alain Derbez. Jenny Ellison, Robin Jeffrey, and Steve McCullough of the Canadian Museum of History are the executive producers of this podcast. Check out historymuseum.ca for more stories, articles, and exhibitions from the museum. For more information about Stanley C. Hunt and the Indian Residential School Memorial Monument, check out the links in our show notes.